Ferrari promised a giant leap forward in 2025, but in Bahrain reality hit hard. What went wrong with the SF-25? Is Leclerc the only one who can tame this beast? And Hamilton? Are you regretting it yet? Ferrari arrived in Bahrain with a technical promise, a package of improvements designed to change the course of the 2025 season. This set of updates was the first major one for the SF-25. It wasn't a cosmetic change. It was a serious and calculated commitment with several fronts of action. The car's new floor was the centerpiece. It was redesigned to generate more downforce without compromising efficiency. This was complemented by adjustments to the side deflectors, the leading edge of the floor, and the expansion of the diffuser, all in line with the goal of widening the car's operating window. There was also a modification to the rear in the area known as the boat tail, intended to improve aerodynamic flow towards the diffuser. The rear wing received adjustments that not only aimed at greater cornering performance but also improved stability on the straight line. Everything was designed to balance the car, improve its grip, and reduce the reliance on very specific setups that had limited it in the early races. But the message from the team was cautious. Jerome D'Ambrosio, Ferrari's deputy team principal, made it clear that these modifications were not revolutionary. He was explicit: this isn't going to change everything all at once. These are small, incremental steps but necessary to evolve the car. This approach denotes a mindset of sustained progress, where every tenth counts and each new component must be integrated without disrupting the overall harmony. The SF-25 had a fundamental problem: an extremely narrow operating window. This meant that the car only performed well under certain very specific track, temperature, and setup conditions. The improvements aimed to loosen that window, allowing the car to perform more consistently, especially on long runs. During free practice, the team tested both the new and old surfaces, alternating setups on Leclerc's and Hamilton's cars. This type of comparative testing is key, not only to validate changes on track, but also to gather telemetry that informs future development decisions. The philosophy behind these updates wasn't to innovate for the sake of innovation, but to correct the structural deficiencies the car had been suffering from since the start of the season. The key was to find stability, reduce the car's sensitivity to minimal changes, and give the drivers a predictable tool with which they could compete consistently throughout an entire race. In theory, it all made sense. Ferrari had done its homework. But as is often the case in Formula One, the track alone has the final say. Although the overall balance was bittersweet, the improvements Ferrari introduced in Bahrain weren't a complete failure. There were clear signs of progress. The first positive signs came during practice and were confirmed in the race. The SF-25 showed greater stability in certain phases of the Grand Prix, especially in the second stint on medium tires. Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton hinted at this in their statements. Both agreed that the car's feel had changed compared to previous races. Leclerc, who knows the Ferrari's limits intimately, noticed more predictable behavior in fast corners, where the car tended to be nervous and uncooperative. Hamilton, for his part, was grateful for the team's work, stating that the improvements were working, although there was still much to optimize. The most compelling data appeared in the race pace analysis. During the second stint, on medium tires and without significant traffic, Ferrari was the fastest team on track. Neither Red Bull, Mercedes, nor McLaren matched the SF-25's consistency in that phase. This suggests that, under certain conditions, the car has the potential to be competitive. The tire's thermal management was more efficient, and the car showed less degradation than in previous races, at least in that specific phase. This performance allowed Hamilton to make up ground after a difficult start, while Leclerc maintained enough pace to stay in the podium. This was a clear indication that while the improvements didn't immediately transform the car into a title contender, they did correct key aspects of the overall balance. Another aspect that worked in the team's favor was the work methodology. Ferrari carried out comparative tests between the old and new surfaces during free practice. These tests, far from being mere experiments, provided crucial data that is now part of the Maranello development bench. This seemingly discrete collection of information represents one of the weekend's greatest assets. It isn't immediate, but it's the kind of process that builds championships in the medium and long term. Even in a scenario where expectations were high and the result wasn't what they had hoped for, the team gained a number of valuable lessons. The car is more stable in certain conditions, responds better to certain tire compounds, and now has a real-world comparative database that didn't exist before. That's the true value of these improvements. Not the immediate spectacle, but the foundation for Ferrari to reconfigure its technical path. The SF-25 isn't ready to win, but for the first time this season, it appears to be making progress. Despite the improvements implemented and small glimmers of progress, Ferrari once again faced the same demons that have dogged it in recent seasons in Bahrain. The disappointment came not only from the final result, but from how the car's performance plummeted again in key moments of the race. Everything that seemed to have worked during the midterms dissolved when it mattered most. One of the main problems was the overall lack of grip. Charles Leclerc explained it with brutal clarity. The car doesn't have enough grip, and this causes a domino effect. In qualifying, this lack of grip can be masked with aggressive setups and fresh tires. But in the race, with increasing fuel loads and degradation, this lack becomes a death sentence. The car begins to slide, the tires wear more, and lap after lap, the car loses pace until it is out of direct contention with the leaders. That was the case in Bahrain. As the laps progressed, the SF-25 became more unstable. The pace was slipping, and both Leclerc and Hamilton began to progressively lose time, especially after the second tire change. Ferrari's strategy also contributed to this fall. They opted to start on medium compounds, seemingly seeking a strategic advantage over the other teams, who opted for soft tires. But the reality was different. Ferrari lost positions early on due to a lack of traction, and when the safety car came into play, they were forced to switch to hard tires. That's when everything fell apart. On the hards, the Ferrari simply had no pace. McLaren and Mercedes overtook them easily. The car lost all the competitiveness it had briefly shown in the middle stint, and there was no way to reverse it. From that moment on, the race became a battle of contention, not attack. One of the most revealing moments was a radio message between Leclerc and his engineer, which was not broadcast on television. In that exchange, Leclerc points out that they are losing time everywhere on the track. It's not a localized problem, it's not a specific sector. It's a global deficit. The car is unbalanced, it doesn't respond well at any point, and that's an alarming sign for any Formula One team. There was also a difference in the driver's adaptation. Leclerc seems to have found a way to extract more from the car, but even he was frustrated. Hamilton, who is still understanding the SF-25, commented that he needs to change his driving style to adapt. Coming from a decade with Mercedes, that's not a simple transition. Ferrari's car demands a different driving philosophy, and that takes time. Time they may not have if they want to fight for something important this season. In short, what went wrong wasn't just one thing. It was a set of errors and technical limitations that, combined, negated any aerodynamic progress. Ferrari is caught between partial progress and the same old structural limitations. And until they manage to solve the problems of grip, balance, and tire management, they will continue to fall into the same pattern. Promises that fade into thin air on the asphalt. Lewis Hamilton has been synonymous with success for over a decade. With Mercedes, he won almost everything and dominated an entire era of Formula One. But 2025 finds him in completely new territory, Ferrari. And what many expected to be an explosive union of talent and legacy is, for now, resulting in a tougher adaptation phase than expected. The change isn't just a change in colors or culture. It's a complete shift in technical philosophy. Hamilton spent years developing a driving style closely linked to the Mercedes' handling. Precise steering, solid traction exiting corners, a car that fit his instincts like a glove. The SF-25, on the other hand, demands something else. From the first laps with Ferrari, it was clear that the car doesn't respond the same way. It's more unpredictable in slow corners, more sensitive to weight distribution, and above all, more demanding in terms of how the curbs and braking are approached. Hamilton said it bluntly, this car needs to be driven completely differently. And that, coming from a 7-time world champion, says it all. In Bahrain, this learning curve was more evident than ever. In qualifying, Hamilton was competitive, but in the race, his pace was inconsistent. Although he managed to cut time and advance positions in the second stint on mediums, he looked uncomfortable in the most demanding moments, as if he were still searching for the balance between what he wants to do and what the car allows. This partial disconnection between driver and machine is dangerous. Not because Hamilton won't adapt, he will. His talent and experience are unquestionable, but because every race that passes without being completely in sync with the car is a missed opportunity compared to rivals who are completely in sync. Leclerc, for example, already knows the car, understands its whims, and although he also suffers from the limitations of the SF-25, he is getting more out of each stint. Hamilton, on the other hand, is in the exploration phase, calibrating his feelings, adjusting his style, and trying to fit into an environment that, although steeped in history, is technically alien to him. Furthermore, there is a factor that further complicates the situation: pressure. Hamilton did not arrive at Ferrari as a driver in the process of reconstruction. He arrived as the icon who was supposed to return the prancing horse to glory. That narrative carries weight. And when the results aren't on track, the environment becomes more demanding, more impatient. Despite everything, there are positive signs. Hamilton has shown moments of brilliance on long runs, his feedback is key to the car's technical development, and his experience is helping to better structure the work on track. But the question is how long it will take him to achieve complete synchronization with the SF-25, and whether by then Ferrari will still be in a position to fight for more than intermediate points. What is clear is that Hamilton hasn't given up. He's learning, adjusting, adapting. But in modern Formula One, where every tenth counts and every decision is measured to the millimeter, adaptation isn't a luxury. It's urgent. Ferrari isn't where it promised to be. The upgrade package in Bahrain was, in theory, the first big step toward a more competitive season. But in practice, it was barely a respite amidst a sea of inconsistencies. Yes, there was progress, there was positive data, and aerodynamic evolution has a clear direction. But in Formula One, directions aren't enough. You need results. What we saw in Bahrain was a team still burdened by the same structural doubts that have plagued it for years. The lack of overall grip, poor tire management, and questionable strategic decisions continue to set the tone. Although the car showed flashes of competitiveness, the reality is that Ferrari is trapped in a cycle of constant correction. Fix one problem and two more appear. The driver situation isn't helping to calm the waters either. Leclerc, brilliant at times, is pushing the limits of a car that doesn't respond with the same dedication. Hamilton, in the midst of a transition, continues to decipher the SF-25 code. Both are pushing, both are contributing, but the car is not yet ready to give them the weapons they need. And that is the most worrying aspect. Because while Ferrari tries to fine-tune its performance, teams like McLaren and Mercedes continue to add to the mix. In Formula One, time is money, and every race without real improvement is a lost race. In the short term, new updates are expected. Changes to the suspension, tweaks to the front wing, optimization of thermal management. There is work, there is data, and there is intent. But the question everyone is asking is it enough? Can Ferrari reverse this trend in the upcoming races? Or are we facing another year where expectations will once again collide with reality? What happens in the following rounds will not only define the season, it can define the entire course of this technical project. Because in modern Formula One, you either evolve with surgical speed, or you simply fall behind.